It's too big. How do humans even survive this? Alien warrior in shock. The great warrior Korak of the Drakon Empire had fought in over 50 battles. He had survived plasma storms, asteroid fields, and beasts taller than war machines. His people called him Korak the Unbreakable. But today, he was afraid. His ship slowly descended through the clouds of planet Earth. The atmosphere shook the ship like a wild creature. Thunder roared outside like war drums. Lightning flashed across the sky like swords of light cutting the heavens. Korak clutched his seat. "This planet is angry," he muttered. "How do humans live here?" The ship landed in a place humans called New York City. Korak stepped outside and froze. Everything was huge. Towers made of glass scraped the sky. Roads were filled with giant metal beasts. Humans called them cars, but to Korak, they looked like armored creatures ready to charge. The ground shook beneath his feet as a massive train roared underground like a trapped monster. His 4 eyes widened. "This world is too big," he whispered. "No sane creature should live here." Suddenly, a loud siren screamed across the street. Korak jumped and pulled out his plasma blade, ready for battle. But no one else reacted. Humans simply walked past him, drinking coffee and talking on their small devices. A child laughed and pointed at him. A street vendor flipped chicken on a hot grill like nothing was happening. Why are they not afraid? Korak wondered. A strong wind blew through the city, almost pushing him backwards. A piece of paper flew and slapped his face. He growled, thinking it was some kind of attack. But again, humans ignored it like it was nothing. He had expected humans to be weak and soft. But no weak species could survive this chaotic world. He decided to test them. Korak approached a man who was calmly eating a hot dog. "You, human warrior," he said. The man blinked. I'm just on lunch break." Korak leaned closer. "Does nothing here scare you? The storms, the noise, the metal beasts, the trembling ground." The man looked around casually. "This?" he said with a shrug. Just another Monday." He then walked away, still chewing. Korak stood frozen. Suddenly, boom! A crack of thunder exploded across the sky. Rain began to fall like arrows. Humans rushed for cover. But nobody screamed, nobody panicked. Some even danced in the rain. A group of teenagers ran past Korak, laughing as they jumped in puddles. One shouted, "Woo! I love storms!" Korak's mind could not process this. They enjoy danger? A loudspeaker crackled above him. "Severe weather alert. Please stay indoors." Korak waited for screams, for chaos, for people begging for safety. But instead, humans calmly walked into shops, bought umbrellas, and continued life like nothing had happened. He looked up at the black clouds. Back on his planet, a storm like this would destroy entire villages. But here, humans simply smiled and kept walking. Korak felt a strange emotion rising within him. Respect. Just then, a soft voice spoke behind him. "You must be Korak." He turned. A human woman stood there, wearing a bright yellow raincoat and holding 2 steaming cups. "I am Sarah, your Earth guide," she said cheerfully. "Welcome to our world." Korak straightened his back, trying to regain his dignity. "This world is unsafe," he declared. Sarah laughed and handed him a cup. "It's just hot chocolate." Korak sniffed it like a suspicious animal. Sarah continued, "Don't worry. You'll get used to Earth. Humans do." Korak hesitated. Used to this? Impossible. But when he took a sip of the warm drink, something inside him relaxed. For the first time, he felt a small sense of peace, even in this wild place. Sarah smiled. "There's a lot more to see, shall we?" Korak looked once more at the giant metal beasts, the glowing towers, the roaring sky, and whispered again, "It's too big. How do humans even survive this?" Sarah looked at him and simply said, "You'll find out." If you're enjoying this alien adventure, make sure to subscribe to the channel. More thrilling human mysteries are coming. Korak followed Sarah through the crowded streets, still gripping his plasma blade tightly, even though she told him it wasn't needed. It was needed. He could feel it. Something was wrong with this planet. Everything was too loud, too alive, too unpredictable. They crossed a long metal bridge that stood above a roaring river. Cars zoomed past, shaking the ground beneath Korak's feet. Sarah walked casually, sipping her drink. But Korak kept scanning left and right, expecting the bridge to snap at any moment. On his planet, such fragile structures wouldn't survive a breeze. Yet here, humans trusted it with their lives. "Are you sure this thing does not collapse?" he finally asked. Sarah smirked. "Relax, humans built it. It can hold thousands of tons." Korak looked down at the river, a violent monster of swirling water ready to devour anything that fell. These humans walk above death like it's nothing, but then something changed. The air grew colder. The wind slowed. The city began to darken, not like night, but like something massive was blocking the sun. Sarah stopped walking. The people around them looked up. Korak slowly turned and saw it. A gigantic wall of black clouds was forming at the horizon, thick, spinning, glowing with eerie flashes of purple lightning. Boom! Thunder roared like a planet exploding. Sarah's expression finally shifted from calm to serious. She spoke quietly. "Tornado alert." Tornado? Korak had no translation for the word. But when he saw humans running for shelter, not screaming, not panicking, just moving quickly and prepared, he realized, this is something even humans. How could they stay calm, so close to death? Back on his planet, warriors would pray to their ancestors before battle. But these humans? They laughed. They waited. They trusted their walls, their science, each other. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the sound began to fade. The howling wind turned to a low growl. Then silence. Someone slowly opened the door. People walked out carefully. Korak followed. The world outside looked different. Cars were flipped. Trees were torn apart. Signs were bent. But humans were already cleaning, already helping each other. No crying, no fear, only action. Korak whispered, "This planet tries to kill you every day." Sarah nodded. "And every day." She looked at him with steady eyes. "We survive." Korak stared at the distant horizon where the clouds were clearing. And for the first time in his life, a warrior of the Galactic Empire felt small. Not because he was weak, but because he finally understood. Humans were not just strong, they were unyielding. Sarah and Korak continued walking through the recovering city. The storm had passed, but its smell still lingered. Wet metal, broken trees, damp smoke. Korak observed silently. Everywhere, humans were fixing what nature had destroyed. No complaining, no fear, just action. A man hammered wood onto a damaged window. A woman handed food to strangers. Children helped pick debris. No one was ordered, no one was forced. They just did it. Korak finally spoke. "Your people, they do not wait for leaders. Sarah smiled. We don't wait. We act. That's how humans work. Korak nodded slowly. Something inside him was changing. They turned a corner, and suddenly alarms blared. Wee-oo! 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 Red lights flashed across nearby buildings. Korak tensed instantly. Sarah's expression changed, calm to alert. People on the street looked out. No panic. Just focus. A voice echoed through the speakers. Fire reported at Block C, residential tower. Evacuation in progress. Korak followed Sarah's gaze. Far ahead, a tall building was covered in smoke. Thick, black, rising fast. Windows cracked. Fire burst through one floor like a dragon breathing flames. Korak stepped back in shock. Your planet is on fire again? Sarah threw off her jacket, revealing a rescue uniform underneath. She grabbed a radio from her belt. Korak, stay here. Korak blinked. What? Where are you? But before he could finish, Sarah ran straight toward the burning tower. People gathered at a distance, but no one blocked her. Some shouted, We've got people on floor 12. Another yelled, 2 kids missing. Korak felt his instincts ignite. This is war. Without another thought, he followed. The heat was unbearable. Smoke burned his lungs. Roaring flames cracked walls like breaking bones. Humans, without armor, without weapons, charged inside with hoses, axes, stretchers. Korak shouted, Sarah! You cannot fight fire. It is death. Sarah didn't stop. She looked back only once. Then let death move aside. I have people to save. She disappeared into the smoke. Korak stood frozen. His warrior mind screamed, foolish, irrational, certain death. But another thought whispered, this is bravery beyond battle. Screams echoed from above. Glass shattered and fell like raining knives. A young boy stumbled out, choking on smoke. Without thinking, Korak rushed forward, picked him up gently, and carried him to safety. The boy coughed weakly. My sister, still inside. Korak looked at the burning building, and without hesitation, he ran in. Inside, the world was hell. Fire crawled across the walls like living snakes. Smoke turned everything into shadows. Human firefighters shouted directions. Left wing clear. Room 1203. Check again. These humans, they run toward fire, not away from it. Korak found Sarah on the 11th floor, carrying a little girl in her arms. Her face was covered in soot, but her voice was steady. Korak, take her down! He nodded, grabbing the child as gently as possible. Before he could leave, the ceiling above creaked. Sarah turned. Her eyes widened. Korak, move! Crash! The ceiling collapsed between them, flames bursting like an explosion. Korak shielded the child. When he looked up, Sarah was gone, buried behind a wall of fire and debris. Korak to base. Sarah is trapped, someone shouted on the radio. Firefighters rushed in, but Korak was already moving. He placed the child outside the exit and turned back. A firefighter grabbed his arm. You go back in, you die. Korak's voice was deep. Then I die beside a warrior. And he disappeared into the flames. He pushed burning wood aside with his armored arms. Heat scorched his skin. Smoke stung his eyes. But he kept moving until he heard her cough. Sarah! She was pinned under a heavy beam, barely conscious. Korak roared, lifting the burning beam with all his strength. His skin sizzled, flames wrapped around his armor, but he did not stop. He pulled her onto his back and charged through the inferno. Every step felt like walking through the sun, but he didn't stop. Not until fresh air hit his face. They burst out of the building together as humans cheered. Firefighters rushed to cool them with water. Sarah coughed, barely able to speak. You came back for me. Korak's voice was low. You are my guide. I follow you, even into death. Sarah smiled weakly. Welcome to Earth, warrior. Korak looked back at the burning building, then at the humans around him, exhausted, coughing, injured, yet still standing, still smiling, still helping. He whispered, humans do not just survive danger. They run into it to save others. Korak had faced storms. He had seen fire. He had walked through chaos, and each time he thought, this is the worst Earth can offer. He was wrong, very wrong. Days passed since the fire incident. Sarah had recovered quickly. To Korak's surprise, human bodies were weaker than his species, yet their willpower healed them faster than any medicine. One morning, Sarah met him with a mischievous smile. Ready for the next lesson about humans? Korak narrowed his eyes. Why do I feel I will not like it? Sarah laughed and tossed him a heavy backpack. Pack your strength. We're going somewhere higher. Higher? How high? She simply pointed to a picture on a nearby billboard. Korak stared at a mountain so tall it pierced the clouds. Mount Everest. They traveled for days, through forests, villages, rocky paths. Korak watched as the world around them grew colder, quieter, more dangerous. Yet humans still lived here. Some sold tea on the edge of cliffs, others smiled while walking along vertical death traps. Why do humans live here? Korak asked a local guide. The old man smiled. We don't live here, we grow here. They finally reached Everest Base Camp. Hundreds of humans gathered, wrapped in heavy gear, attaching ropes, checking oxygen tanks. Korak stared at them in disbelief. These are warriors? Soldiers? Sarah shook her head. No, they're climbers, students, teachers, programmers, housewives, anyone who decides to try. Try what? Korak demanded. Sarah pointed upward. To climb the tallest mountain on their own planet. Korak looked at the peak once more. It was not a mountain. It was a spear aimed at the sky. Sharp, cold, killing wind swirling around it like invisible blades. Korak spoke in shock. No flying beasts, no vehicles, no armor. They climb, with their hands. Not hands, Sarah smiled softly. With hope. Korak watched a group preparing to ascend. One man was limping. His leg was metal, a prosthetic. Another was coughing constantly, yet tightening his harness. Two women, one old, one young, tied a rope together, laughing. Korak couldn't understand. You go to die? The prosthetic man looked at him. We go to live. The climb began. Korak and Sarah stayed behind at the lower camps, observing weather and radio signals. Hours passed, then days. Wind screamed through the mountains like tortured spirits. Korak could barely stand in the cold, even with his alien biology. How do humans survive up there? He asked. Sarah exhaled into her gloves. They don't always. Many die trying. Then why try? Her answer was quiet. Because sometimes, living is not about breathing. It's about becoming more than you were yesterday. Suddenly, the radio crackled. RKZZT. Avalanche, avalanche, above Camp 4. We've got missing climbers. Korak stood up instantly. Sarah grabbed her gear. Korak, stay here. I need to... But Korak was already moving. No. This time, I follow you into death. They raced up the snowy path. Snow fell hard, stinging like needles. The wind roared loud enough to drown thoughts. Visibility dropped to nothing. Only white. Endless white. Soon, They reached a broken section of the trail. Half buried in snow, they found a backpack, then a rope, then a hand, frozen, trembling. A young female climber was pinned beneath icy rubble. Her lips were blue, breath barely visible. Sarah didn't hesitate. She grabbed the shovel, digging fast. Korak used his alien strength to tear through frozen debris. They pulled her free, barely alive. But then, from above, a low rumble. Korak looked up. His eyes widened. Another avalanche. "Run!" Sarah screamed. They tried to move, but the ground shook. The world turned white. The sky collapsed. Korak grabbed Sarah and the injured climber, shielded them with his body. Boom! Snow crashed over them like 1,000 oceans. Sound disappeared. Light disappeared. Only crushing sea, islands, minutes, or hours passed. Korak's strength began to fade. But then, a voice. Faint. "Keep moving," Korak realized. It was Sarah's voice. She was digging, even buried, even freezing. She dug with bleeding hands. Korak roared, using the last of his energy to punch through the snow. Then, light. They emerged, gasping, collapsing on the snow. Rescue teams arrived. The climber was rushed away. Sarah lay on her back, smiling at the sky. Korak looked at her. "You humans are insane." She nodded proudly. "At least we're not boring." Korak stood and looked at the towering peak once more. He finally understood. Humans did not climb mountains to conquer them. They climbed to conquer themselves. He whispered, "Humans do not live on this planet. They challenge it." Korak had seen humans face storms. He had seen them run into fire. He had seen them climb death itself. But today, he was about to see something far more terrifying. Human weakness. Sarah took him to a place she called the Hope Center. From the outside, it looked peaceful. Flowers, benches, sunlight. But inside, Korak froze. There were people without legs, people in wheelchairs, people with missing arms, some who could not speak, some whose hands shook as they tried to hold a spoon. No army, no armor, no weapons. Only fragile flesh. Korak whispered, "Is this a recovery prison?" Sarah shook her head gently. "No. This is where warriors come, after the battle of life." He watched quietly as a young girl, barely 12, slowly pushed her walker across the hallway. Her legs were weak. Each step looked like pain. But she smiled. "Come on, Maya. Just 3 more steps," her mother encouraged. The girl took another shaky step, then another. She fell. Korak moved forward, ready to help, but Sarah stopped him with a hand. "Wait." Maya pushed herself back. Up. Sweat on her brow, teeth clenched. She got up. Step, step, step. And when she finally reached her chair, she raised her tiny fist in victory. The room cheered like she had defeated a beast. Korak stood silent. This child was weaker than any creature he'd seen. Yet she fought harder than any warrior. Sarah led him further inside, to the training hall. There he saw a man lifting weights, but his arms were metal, a double amputee, training harder than living soldiers. He grunted with effort. Metal clanked, sweat dripped. Another man ran on a treadmill, with one lung. He coughed, almost collapsing, but held the rails and kept running. An old woman punched a boxing bag, slow, but determined. Every strike filled with history. Korak muttered, Why do they suffer so much? Why not rest? Sarah's voice was soft. Because their bodies broke, but their spirits refused to. She paused, then added, Korak, pain doesn't stop humans. It reminds them they're still alive. He followed her into the garden. There, a group sat around a table, painting. Some hands trembled badly. Some used their mouth to hold the brush because they had no arms. Korak approached a man painting with his feet. Warrior, Korak asked slowly, what happened to your limbs? Korak had seen enough. Storms, fire, avalanches, even the fragile ones, the broken ones, stood unbroken inside. He could no longer pretend he understood strength. He didn't. Everything he had been taught on his home planet was a lie. That night, he sat alone on a rooftop, staring at the human city. Lights sparkled like a million tiny stars living on land. Sirens in the distance, children laughing in the street, a man playing guitar, two people arguing, one couple dancing, life, chaotic, unplanned, uncontrollable, yet moving forward. Korak whispered to himself, How do they do it? How do they keep living when death is always so close? Footsteps approached. Sarah climbed up beside him, holding 2 warm drinks, as usual. You're quite et today, she said gently. Korak didn't accept the drink this time. He turned to her, eyes burning with desperate confusion. Sarah, I don't understand humans. She stayed silent, waiting. Korak stood up, pacing back and forth restlessly like a beast in a cage. Your planet attacks you. Your storms crush your homes. Your fire burns your cities. Your mountains try to kill you. Your own bodies betray you. Your bones break. Your hearts fail. Your flesh tears. And yet, he turned sharply, voice trembling. You do not stop. Sarah watched him, saying nothing. Korak continued, voice rising. Even when you have no legs, you climb. Even when you have no arms, you build. Even when you have no strength, you smile. Even when death itself comes, you refuse to bow. He slammed a fist against the wall, cracking the concrete. Why? His voice echoed across the rooftop, raw, shaking. What keeps you alive? Sarah took a slow breath. Then, instead of answering, she asked, Korak, how many stars have you seen in your lifetime? He stared at her, confused. Millions, he replied. And how many times have you looked at one and said, I want to touch that one? Korak frowned. That is impossible. Stars are too far, too hot, untouchable. Sarah smiled softly. And yet humans looked up at the moon and said the same. Too far, too dangerous, impossible. She leaned closer. But we still went. Korak stared, realization dawning. Sarah continued. Humans don't survive because we are the strongest. We survive because we never accept our limits. Korak slowly sank to his knees, not in defeat, but in reverence, a warrior of 1,000 victories, bowing before a truth greater than any weapon. He looked up at Sarah, eyes filled with something new, not just respect, not just admiration, but hope. Sarah, he said softly, teach me. She raised an eyebrow. Teach you what? He lowered his head completely, a gesture of sacred submission in his culture. Teach me how to be human. Sarah didn't speak. She simply placed a hand on his shoulder, warm, gentle, unshaking, and said only 3 words. Then stand up. Korak's ship hovered above Earth one last time. The blue planet glowed in the void, fragile yet unbroken. He pressed his forehead against the viewport, whispering to himself, "I came here thinking humans were weak. Now I know they are the strongest beings in the galaxy." Sarah stood beside him. "Ready to go home?" she asked. Korak hesitated. "I came here as a warrior," he said quietly, "but I am leaving as something else." Sarah smiled. "Not weaker, just wiser." As his ship rose through the atmosphere, Korak opened a transmission to his homeworld, a direct link to the High Council of the Drakon Empire. Millions would hear his broadcast. He stood in his ceremonial armor, scorched from fire, scratched by ice, stained by storm. A warrior's proof of battle. Except these wounds were not from fighting enemies, but from fighting beside humans. The council appeared on the hologram, stern, proud, expecting news of conquest. The chancellor spoke. "Warrior Korak, what is your report? Is Earth worth claiming?" Korak took a deep breath and spoke slowly. "Earth cannot be claimed." The council members exchanged shocked glances. Korak continued before they could interrupt. "Not because they are weak, not because they are strong, but because they are something greater." He turned his camera to face the Earth behind him. A glowing marble of storms, fire, ice, life. "This planet is madness," Korak declared. "It burns its people, it freezes them, it drowns them, it wounds them, yet—" He pointed at the world. "They do not die." He raised his fist, voice booming like thunder. "They fall, they rise, they break, they rebuild, they bleed, they keep moving." His voice trembled with awe. "They are not the children of their planet. They are its masters." Silence fell across the council chamber. Some stared in disbelief. Some leaned forward, listening. Korak stepped closer to the camera, eyes fierce. "You ask if we should fear humans?" He shook his head. "No. We should learn from them." He bowed his head, not to his leaders, but to Earth. "I, Korak, of the Drakon Empire, declare humans not as prey, nor as rivals, but as teachers." He placed his fist over his heart. "And I am their first student." The council remained silent. Then, unexpectedly, one of the oldest council members stood. A hardened general, one who had seen 100 wars. He whispered, "What do they teach?" Korak looked back at Earth one more time. "They teach hope." He ended the transmission. Silence filled the ship. Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder. "So, what now?" Korak stared at the stars ahead. "I return home." Then he looked back at Earth, softly. "But one day, I will return here again." Sarah arched a brow. "As what? Ambassador? Student?" Korak smirked. "Human."